to me, Bitcoin has huge potential. I do see it as digital gold. I know that's a meme, but I think I believe in that. Like I think Bitcoin, because of its simplicity, it's hard to change, and it has these kind of set rules for how it works, and it's not kind of moving or going anywhere. But I think the new financial system, a more open and programmable financial system, that's going to happen on Ethereum and not on Bitcoin.
Is your crypto working for you? It can be with yield farming. But what are the risks? Hacking, volatility, poor smart contracts, scams. Even if you overcome the risks, there are still limitations.
Do you have $1 million to invest? Yield farming is a very complex, time-consuming, and expensive process. Can you imagine that not only you need to possess advanced skills to mitigate your risk and check smart contracts, but also you need to quit your job? In order to get the highest return, you need to manage thousands of platforms and check protocols around the clock. Well, not anymore.
We're proud to announce the Swissborg Smart Yield account. It's now possible for anyone to earn yield on most of your cryptos, such as USDC, Bitcoin, Ether, BNB, and only starting with 10 euros with a tap of your finger. So how does it work? It's simple. On a daily basis, Oracle scans and monitors all the different investment opportunities and delivers for you the best investment returns.
So how is that more secure? Not only do we assess the best risk-reward ratio, but also your assets are protected by our MPC technology and our safety net program. And how it does deliver return? Well, because our system is scanning the market every single day, you get the optimal return on that day.
How do you get started? It's easy in 3 different steps. The first one, you deposit. The second one, you start the yield program. And the third one, you start relaxing, enjoying your passive income. So guys, you know what to do. Subscribe to the Smart Yields, buckle up, and enjoy the ride.
Dear crypto community and blockchain buddies across the globe, welcome back to Kryptonites, the no BS blockchain channel built with the community and for the community. And today we have another mind-blowing guest, Camila Russo, the author of The Infinite Machine and the CEO behind the Defiant, one of the coolest podcasts in the game. We're going to discuss some really exciting topics such as what is DeFi, but also what are the top highlights on the Defiant podcast. And on top of that, a personal story through Argentina's hyperinflation and lots of cool stuff to come. But before we kick off, a big shout out to Nate at Crypto Slate, who happens to be here. Don't forget to check out the summarized version of this video if you rather have the reading format. It's really well summarized. And without further ado, Camila, first of all, congratulations on all your great effort and all the great results. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Super excited to have you. And I would love to kick off, Camila, by that transition going from Bloomberg to falling in love with this space and dedicating your entire life, on educating people on the crypto and blockchain space. Tell us your story. It must be fascinating.
Thanks. Well, I'm a financial journalist. I was at Bloomberg for 8 years. Started there as an intern in New York, and then went to Buenos Aires to cover markets there. And it was in Argentina, actually, when I first wrote about Bitcoin in 2013, seeing how Argentines were using cryptocurrency to protect against inflation and currency controls. Then I spent some time in Spain covering European stocks, and then back in New York in 2017 and 2018, where I was a macro market reporter for Bloomberg's Markets Live blog. And I took this chance to write about crypto again. As 2017, there was a huge boom, as you know, and writing about the space every single day. covering like all the craziness, and also just the like revolutionary tech and aspect of it. I really kind of saw the huge potential it had, and just really enjoyed covering this like just like fast paced, crazy space, and basically never left since. At the end of 2017, I decided to pitch to write a book on the history of Ethereum, the Infinite Machine. I got a deal with HarperCollins, and then spent most of 2018 between writing the book and still being a journalist at Bloomberg. But by the end of 2018, I decided that I really had to kind of focus on finishing my book in the best way I could. And I also decided that 8 years at the same company was enough time, and I was ready to do something different and be independent. So I decided to leave Bloomberg in early 2019. So 2019 finished my book, and also started the Defiant as a newsletter in June. And then it kind of grew from there, added a podcast, a YouTube channel, a website to host all this content last year. And this year I'm, building out even other pieces to it to make it kind of the information company for Web3.
That's super cool, Camilla. So, what really caught your heart? So, was it hyperinflation and Bitcoin? Because later on, you wrote obviously the Infinite Machine. What really caught your soul and made you think I'm going all in on this?
Yeah, I think the kind of first thing that caught my attention about crypto was my experience in Argentina. Well, I'm originally from Chile, so I'm from South America, but Chile is very different from Argentina. Argentina still has a very populist government, which basically prints money to finance itself. And this means that it's constantly running into problems with inflation, people wanting to sell their local currency, buy dollars. And so the way that they fix this is imposing currency controls, which means making people stay in the local currency, and forbidding the purchase of USD or a foreign currency, which makes people want to hold pesos even less. So it's this kind of like vicious cycle. And I was, covering this market, covering the different ways that people were finding to handle this, like how it was impacting the economy, people's savings. And then, I see this currency that is completely independent from any country, any central bank, that can be transacted peer to peer without the need of any intermediary or financial institution. I mean, I just thought that was pretty revolutionary. The ability for people to be their own bank and not have to be at the mercy of irresponsible governments, and banks who in the case of Argentina also have the power to stop you withdrawing your cash. So yeah, that's kind of where I first had interest in crypto, and then after that, like, just kept track of what was happening in the space. And so, like I said, when I was back in New York in 2017, I took the opportunity to cover crypto again, and much of what was driving the hype of 2017 was ICOs. So that's what led me to kind of learn about Ethereum. And I saw that, wow, like, Ethereum is really ambitious. It's trying to be kind of the next step in crypto after Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin was the first peer-to-peer money, but Ethereum wants to be peer-to-peer everything. Like, because it is programmable, it really enables developers to build whatever they want on top of this blockchain. So I thought that idea was incredibly interesting, and thought it was just pretty surprising that nobody had really written the history of Ethereum. So saw an opportunity there for me to be the first one to tell the story, which to me at the time I thought, even if Ethereum fails, it still already changed the history of blockchain, tech, and finance with what it attempted to do, and even what it had already done in 2017, which is fuel this ICO mania, which, like there's a lot to criticize there, but in its essence, it was the first time that people were able to um, finance themselves. Like startups were able to finance themselves in a decentralized way, which is pretty revolutionary. I think ICO got a really bad name, but it actually enabled something that's pretty radical. Decentralized fundraising. So, anyways, I just thought Ethereum really deserved to be documented in a more permanent way. And from there, it was just I kind of really dove into learning the story, talking to all the founders, like all the people involved in the early days, to all the developers building on top of Ethereum. I really tried to immerse myself in the community. So I went to all the different hackathons, with all the different conferences, like really spent time with the Ethereum community. And I realized that, there is something real here. Like it's not about like all the like hype and fluff of the 2017 days. During 2018 and 2019, I saw, okay, like these guys are building real applications. Like they are enabling actual kind of decentralized finance. And so I thought, um, there's something that will make a real kind of lasting impact in the world here. So that's why I decided to then start the Defiant, because I thought at the time there wasn't really anyone paying much attention to DeFi. There weren't any DeFi focused newsletters. Mainstream financial media wasn't covering it, and even crypto media wasn't covering it very much. So again, I saw an opportunity there for me to be kind of the one leading the kind of coverage of the space.
So I'm sure that's where the whole title, The Infinite Machine, came. There was a really strong statement on one of your recent podcasts with Mark Cuban, which, by the way, guys, is a super duper, he's a legend. I've been following him since season 1 of Shark Tank, and so glad that he's joining the community as well. And he mentioned something that was quite strong, that Ethereum has more potential or more value than Bitcoin. Obviously the Bitcoin maxis wouldn't completely agree on this kind of thing, but you did mention that Ethereum is giving infinite opportunities, right? It's creating, like you said, a new society, new infrastructure. Do you think that statement was a bit far-fetched, or do you agree with it in some ways? How did you feel about that?
The statement that Ethereum has more potential than Bitcoin, I think it's really hard to say, but I definitely see his point, and I do tend to agree with some caveats. To me, Bitcoin has huge potential. I do see it as digital gold. I know that's a meme, but I think I believe in that. Like I think Bitcoin, because of its simplicity, and because it's meant to be hard to change, and it has these kind of set rules for how it works, and it's not kind of moving or going anywhere. I think it's really well suited to be the place where you go and just park some of your savings, to diversify, to protect against money printers and whatever. So I think that's a huge use case. I do not believe Bitcoin is peer-to-peer money as it was initially intended to be, but I do believe it's digital gold, and that's a huge thing. It is providing a vehicle for people to have uncensorable money. And so I think that's kind of the role for Bitcoin going forward. It's also kind of the first gateway for most people into crypto, and it will probably continue to be that. Uh, I think maybe Ethereum, as it gains popularity with all its different use cases, will also kind of share that role as kind of the main gateway for mainstream. So it does play a huge role. So to me, it is kind of the gold of Web3, like the safe haven of Web3, which is really important. But uh, Ethereum is different. I mean, Ethereum was built to be more flexible. It was built to enable many other use cases. Like, it can be a store of value. I mean, Ether is kind of the base currency of this new financial system being built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. So it can definitely be a store of value, but Ethereum itself, the platform, and Ether as kind of the fuel to these transactions, is enabling so many other use cases besides being a store of value. So in that sense, I do agree with Mark that there is just like wider potential, because there's so much more that can be built on Ethereum and that cannot be built on top of Bitcoin. So I think the new financial system, a more open and programmable financial system, that is, that's here. I mean, it's not like a theory that may happen. It's actually here and like getting used and getting built. That's going to happen on Ethereum and not on Bitcoin.
Those are some really, really good points. And I think you're right. I try to explain to people that if Bitcoin is digital gold, if it's, the future of a global reserve currency or currency or commodity, it's still not financial services in its whole, right? Because Ethereum is more building reinventing financial services, right? From everything, every single activity within it. So yeah, there's definitely great potential. And so by the way, if you guys think that Ethereum has more potential, don't forget to drop a comment in the comments box below. Some people may think that Ethereum in market cap may surpass Bitcoin one day. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell us why. Your input is critical. And obviously, Camilla, you did an amazing interview with Mark Cuban. We'll put a link below. But I'd love to ask you, like, if you could tell us, 2 or 3 of your favorite moments that you can recall. I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot through the Defiant podcast, and just sharing that information with us. That would be super cool.
Yeah, the interview with Mark Cuban is definitely a highlight for the podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation. To me, it was really kind of a positive surprise to see how much he actually knew about DeFi and NFTs. Like, he was like really knowledgeable and had actually used all this stuff and like tested it himself. Like, he wasn't just like speaking from like other sources. He had actually like used all of these applications and was yield farming and using Aave and minting NFTs. So that was super cool to see, like the interview with him, and like the fact that after actually testing all this stuff, he had come away with the conclusion that DeFi is the future, that NFTs is the like will revolutionize everything. So it just like his opinions carried that much more weight because he had actually kind of tested it and like tried this stuff out. It's I think like I do like one interview per week, so it's like, and I started this April last year, so it's been tons of really interesting conversations. It's gonna be really hard to pick 3, but I think just like I because like these are kind of the most recent conversations I'll just like highlight the most recent podcasts I've done. So, and they're interesting because I really try to mix things up and bring more kind of mainstream interviewees, or people from traditional finance, to ask them what they think about DeFi. And I also bring in people who are very deep in DeFi to get that kind of like difference of perspectives and opinions. So that was the case with my interviewee last week. I interviewed People Pleaser, who is an artist that recently made waves in the Ethereum space because she made the animation for Uniswap's V3, sold it as an NFT, raised $500,000 and gave it all away for charity. So she told kind of that story of like how she decided to do that and why. And obviously, like the topic of NFTs came up, and like how she sees NFTs will just empower artists and enable them to monetize their work in a better way. Then the previous episode to that, I interviewed Jim Bianco, who is a researcher for traditional markets, and he's kind of been blown away by DeFi too. Same thing as with Mark, just like experimenting with these protocols and just like seeing how much better this new financial system is. And then before that, I interviewed Antonio Giuliano, the founder of DYDX, one of the biggest decentralized exchanges, focusing on derivatives. And so he was talking about like his latest move to layer 2 to improve scaling. So I guess like to summarize what I'm seeing from all these different perspectives, like founders in Ethereum, artists using NFTs, people from mainstream finance or traditional finance, I should say, and just startup experts and like billionaires like Mark Cuban. They all come from very different perspectives, and they are all finding their own reason to really fall in love with this new Web3 world. And I think that's going to keep happening. I think people are going to come into DeFi and into Web3 and NFTs and find their own use case. Like maybe you're some like crazy gambler and speculator and will love to be a yield farm ape. Maybe you're an artist who will really find utility in selling your unique pieces directly to your audience. Maybe you're just a traditional finance dude who wants to diversify his portfolio. Like all of these things can now happen on decentralized finance and on Web3. So
I have a question. You were talking about ICOs earlier in 2017. And by the way, for those watching out there, ICOs have nothing wrong. It's the actors that make it bad. ICOs are actually the most decentralized way of fundraising that exists, way better than having a room of VCs, just buy the tokens and private sales and stuff like that. So, but I have two questions for you, Camilla. Like, ICOs was the bubble of 2017. Are NFTs becoming the bubble of 2021 because it's becoming a little bit far-fetched or overstretched, or do you think it's quite different from all the other bubbles we've had?
It's definitely different. Just the token itself is different. I mean, they are kind of unique pieces. They're about kind of linking some property to a token, like some I don't know, digital art or a music track or like attendance or a ticket. It's like the token itself is very different from ERC20 tokens linked to a project. Like that can be seen a bit like stock in a project. I know you're not supposed to say that, but that's I think how people like really see them when they invest in ERC20 tokens. So the thing itself is just fundamentally different. I mean, they're different things, but there can still be a bubble in the sense that people might be paying more for NFTs than they will be worth in the future, because maybe they're paying more right now because of there's just a lot of attention in this space. So there's kind of this like premium attached to NFTs. Like people are seeing so much potential in this new technology that maybe like all those expectations are getting kind of ahead of themselves, and are getting priced in now before they can actually fulfill all these use cases that people are seeing in them. Um, I think that was a bit of the case with the ICO boom. Like people were seeing all the potential that Ethereum and like blockchain technology would enable,
Mm.
but that wasn't the case at the time. Like it was just like a theory of like something that might happen in the future. Like you would buy promises on a white paper, but those promises weren't being delivered and they were being priced as if they were delivered. So I think that was kind of why the bubble happened. Like people were
Mhm.
like buying into this idea of like, oh, there's a new decentralized economy. But then, like, a few months later, you still had a white paper and no decentralized economy. And so prices crashed. Now, I think kind of the fundamentals that people were imagining and hoping for in 2017 have actually come true. Like, many of the projects who actually raised funds in 2017 are now like working products like Aave and MakerDAO.
That's a really good point, Camilla, because obviously we had a DeFi bubble in 2020 summer where most of the projects lost between 70-90% of their value. But as you mentioned, DYDX, for example, with layer 2 scaling solutions on Starkware, and lots of strong products are coming out of DeFi. So these type of corrections do make sense, when there's a bit of an overhype in that sense. I have a really simple question, but it actually may be very difficult, Camilla. Sorry to throw you a curveball, but since you have the Defiant, how would you define DeFi? Because, DeFi itself, there are some projects that claim to be DeFi, but there are some projects in CeFi that are more transparent, more open, and actually sometimes, just more accessible than DeFi is. So how would you actually define DeFi? It's something that I've always asked myself, but very hard to answer.
Yeah, I think DeFi, well, decentralized finance is first the ecosystem of financial applications being built on top of open blockchains like Ethereum. That's kind of like the high level, but I think like you need certain requirements to actually be considered DeFi. I think first one is you need to be non-custodial. So that means users of these protocols should always be in control of their private keys. Like you shouldn't be trusting a centralized entity to hold your assets. So that's one part. So like in DeFi, your wallet is your identity, and you go with your one kind of Web3 wallet and use that to interact with all these different protocols. Like you shouldn't have to be giving your funds to any one of these protocols, but it's they should be automatically connecting with your Web3 wallet, and that's kind of your way of using your money or your funds in these protocols. The other requirement for me is related is the idea that these protocols should be open to anyone. So they shouldn't be requiring KYC or requiring any sort of information to use them. The only thing that should be required is an internet connection and a blockchain address to access. So non-custodial, open, and obviously kind of decentralized is like the where the name comes from.
I would love to hear your take on this, but I think inclusion is more important than decentralization. And even though I would like both, right? I want it to be decentralized and fully inclusive. It's not always the case, especially with the limitations of the technology we have as of today. And when I see projects calling themselves DeFi, but they got fundraised by VCs, and then these VCs own all the tokens for all the governance, even if it's open source, even if it's non-custodial, even if it's without a KYC, that's not DeFi to me. I'm sorry, I would go for a CeFi project over DeFi in that particular sense. Would love to hear your take on that. Are people using the branding to do some additional marketing, or is it just we're still testing the world and trying to figure out how DeFi we can go?
So what's important there is you have the transparency of seeing the token composition in DeFi applications. You can see like the percentage of tokens that are being held in how many wallets, and you can also see the code itself, how money is being spent and how what assets are held, and there you see the difference between Tether, the stablecoin, and DAI, where for Tether, it was kind of years, I think, of speculation about whether they were fully backed by USD or not, and it took like a legal investigation for them to actually admit that they weren't fully backed by actual dollars. With DAI, on the other hand, it's simply a matter of going to the smart contract, going to the protocol, which is open and verifiable, and you can see exactly how many of the different cryptos, like how much Ether, how much USDC, how much of the other collateral types are backing DAI. And that's just something that anyone can verify. So in that sense, I think DeFi will always be better than CeFi, at least in terms of transparency. And you can debate whether some of these projects are more or less have better or worse at token distributions, but at least they will be accessible to anyone. Like anyone can still access them, and if you want, like you can buy like a large amount of like tokens, if you have the money, and become a whale too, or at least like participate with however many tokens you're able to buy, which is it's different from most CeFi apps where you just have no say at all, like no matter how small. So it's not perfect. I think there's a lot of work to do in terms of how to further decentralized governance, but I think it's certainly better than kind of the old way.
Yeah, exactly. And accessible to all, to me, Camilla, is what really touches my heart. And by the way, guys, I have nothing against VCs funding projects. I just don't think it's DeFi. I think DeFi has to go through a fair and equal launch for all. And by the way, Uniswap has done things really well, as you're mentioning, Camilla. And I think actually Yearn Wi-Fi is probably the fairest token launch of all time, right? Because there's no team tokens, there's no VC getting tokens. It's everyone at equal, at the equal grounds, on the same start. And by the way, shout out to Nate for sharing that, because I think, Yearn Wi-Fi is probably one of the realest DeFi projects out there. One more thing I want to ask you related to that, Camilla, is, you mentioned KYC, right? And a lot of the DeFi geeks are super scared about decentralized exchanges being imposed KYC in the future, like regulatory crackdowns. Is that your biggest fear? What is the biggest nightmare in terms of, is it the regulatory side that scares the DeFi people the most, or what are some things that kind of you're not really looking forward to?
I think, like the regulatory question is certainly the biggest question mark. So, I think uncertainty, it drives fear because you don't know I mean, how hard they might be, what regulators may frown upon, what they might allow or not. I think it really hurts innovation and just growth of this industry, and it's really a shame. I think, especially in the US, which drives so much of just DeFi volume and talent. Like a lot of the teams are based here. So I think it does put some limit to how fast DeFi can go, and maybe teams are holding back on implementing certain things, obvious things like distributing fees among token holders, because that will look more like securities. So like it's definitely the case that DeFi teams are holding back on really obvious things that their projects should be doing because of they are afraid of regulators. And I think that's really a shame. I think the US should be the home for innovation and for like this new financial system, or it would just makes sense since so much is already coming from here. Um, but if it isn't, I think it'll be inevitable that these projects will just move elsewhere. Like you just can't operate with this much regulatory uncertainty forever. So I think there will come a point where uh, you these projects will start to hit a wall in terms of how much further they can grow in a space that's in a country that's not like offering just like regulatory clarity. And when that time comes, then it's really likely that, I don't know, development will start coming more from Asia, from Europe, or places that are friendlier. So yeah, I think that's probably kind of the biggest issue weighing on DeFi at the moment.
Amazing. And one last question, Camila. By the way, so far this has been so much fun talking to you. You have so many interesting ideas. It's been absolutely lovely. But you mentioned MakerDAO, you mentioned Aave. Are they amongst your favorite DeFi projects at the moment? If there are others as well, can you tell us which projects are you looking into and why, for people who want to just learn more about DeFi, for instance?
Okay, so I really don't like to kind of recommend or highlight specific projects because
Yeah.
I'm unbiased. I'm a
Unbiased.
journalist in this
Yeah.
space, but I can just mention like projects that I see objectively have a lot of traction. And so you can look at the projects with the most assets locked and with the most volume in DeFi, and also the ones who are just like shipping so many new products and developments. And so those are, yeah, like MakerDAO continues to be kind of the one of the backbones of DeFi for sure.
Yep.
Aave and Compound are the top lending protocols. Um, Uniswap is definitely kind of the lead DEX, but SushiSwap has been a really kind of interesting surprise that kind of came out of nowhere last year. They forked Uniswap, but now what's been surprising is that they've actually grown into a legitimate DEX in the space. Like they have now the second biggest volume after Uniswap. So people are actually using this protocol. And with SushiSwap, there's this whole kind of Yearn finance ecosystem that's kind of like the second wave of DeFi, kind of like, I think, a little bit challenging the mainstays, like challenging the compounds and the Uniswaps. So you have like this second wave, like SushiSwap, Yearn, Cream is like the fork of Compound. So I think that's kind of the interesting kind of newcomers, like the interesting like projects to watch.
Amazing. So in terms of favorite like asset classes, would it be fair to say that you like the yielding and lending? That's one of the most interesting asset classes amongst DeFi at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, like the biggest use case is using stablecoins to gain yield in different lending protocols and yield farming protocols. Like I stay away from like the risky stuff. Like I don't like to think about like trading. I just like
Yeah.
put my stablecoins in a lending protocol and just like have it there earning yield. Have some ETH and that's it. But but I think that's right now like what DeFi is most useful for, just growing your savings, earning interest, and then there's if you want to take more risk, there's the ability to um, borrow on collateral and like have kind of this leveraged long trades or trade on margin. But yeah, that's kind of like for the more experienced trader. But yeah, I think stable coins, lending, earning like passive income is a super important use case. More people can enjoy, not just like the crazy degents.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wholeheartedly agree. And that's exactly what I tell everyone when they're like, is Bitcoin risky? I said, just start with a stable coin and earn yield and then, get to learn about the space in the meantime. And then, by the way, I agree also about derivatives. I think that's one of the fastest growing like DeFi spaces on top of that and with decentralized exchanges. So Camilla, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and we're definitely going to have links of the Defiant, everything you're doing there. We'll put a link for the Infinite Machine as well for you guys to explore a little more. Camilla is an amazing host on her show. Thank you so much, Camilla, for coming. And guys, if you like this show, don't forget to like, comment, and blast that bell notification so you get access to more of these timeless interviews with some of the best crypto educators in the space. Thank you so much for watching. Join us every Wednesday, premiering at a PC near you, 8 o'clock GMT. See you next week, guys.